Hey y'all, this is Willard Watson, Program and Outreach Director at the Lone Rock Art and History Museum. Today we're fortunate enough to feature an interview with Craig Kassan. Craig is a wood artist based out of Franklinton, North Carolina. And his work takes a unique spin on traditional wood turning techniques where he creates truly unique wooden sculptures. We're fortunate to exhibit one of Craig's pieces in Branching Out. This interview is conducted on July 10th, 2020. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this interview. Well, thanks, Craig, for taking some time out of your day to sit with me and just talk about your work. So, my first question is, how did you start working with wood, and did anyone teach you?
I guess my biggest influence was my grandfather. When I was little, I always was into any type of art, craft, whatever, and he was a big supporter, but he was also a machinist, and he did some woodworking on the side, and they had a small apartment in New York. So we actually, any project I wanted to do, he would help me along with. We built a small toy sailboat together. I was probably about 9 or 10, and with him guiding me, we shaped a 2x4 into the hull, hollowed it out with a brace and bit, and made a wooden deck for it. And my grandmother made the sails, and you could actually adjust rudder tension on this thing. And he and I would go out to the lakes in New York and sail this boat, and I actually still have it. But he was probably my biggest influencer. Everything else was just things I picked up in different furniture shops, cabinet shops that I've worked at throughout the years, and a lot of it's just self-taught.
So that's wonderful that you have that familial connection and that you still have that boat that your grandfather made with you. I think it's really special to hold on to those mementos, and to see where you've come since then is really cool as well. So you said you're self-taught. Have you ever taught anyone woodworking?
I've had a couple people approach me about it before, but working a full-time job and trying to do artwork on the side is very time-consuming. I have done with my local club, we have these breakout sessions where a handful of people will come out to my studio or somebody's studio and spend a day with them. So I've done that several times, just trying to pass along and what my techniques and processes for making my sculptures, because it's definitely a little bit different than what a lot of wood turners are used to doing.
That's cool. You get to kind of share your tips and tricks, but you don't have to worry about the responsibility of having like an apprentice or anything.
Yes. Yeah.
So my next question was going to be, would you consider your work to be more functional or sculptural? And do you ever do a combination of the two?
Right now my work's more sculptural, but in the past I have done plenty of functional work. When we lived in Florida, I had my own shop building custom furniture and cabinets. That's when I started turning. It's an ongoing thing. I don't know where I'm going to be in the future. I may just go back to more, functional again. It's
just where your passion takes you.
Yeah. The wall sculptures right now are filling both needs for me right now, because it's combining a lot of the skills that I've learned as a cabinet maker, furniture maker, into what I love about wood turning as well. So I'm just combining both worlds. I'm really happy there right now.
That's great that you're able to kind of marry that and then use your experience in making functional things for your sculptures as well. So North Carolina has a rich history of furniture making, and was that a factor of you deciding to work in the state?
Not really. It was more a family decision to come up here. It was basically my wife's mother was getting older, and she lived in Philadelphia, and she fell a few times, so we convinced her to move to North Carolina, where my wife's other sister lived, and she's like, I'm not going to move unless you move. So we moved so that everybody could be together to help her through her last few years.
That's wonderful that you all came together to do that for her. That's very special. Has your time in North Carolina shaped your work or influenced you in any way?
Definitely. When we moved to North Carolina, I found a very good turning club, and at that time, when we moved up, I was working for somebody else doing kitchen cabinets and trying to convert an old horse barn into a studio, so I wasn't able to make any furniture on my own. So my main concentration became wood turning, but joining this club, there was a lot of very experienced, very good wood turners that were willing to share and help, and it just helped my creativity expand, beyond belief. They're just like, well, this looks great, but try this, and just challenging me and just helping me grow a lot. So it was a great experience.
Yeah, that's cool how just meeting these older, experienced woodworkers, and wood turners, how they influenced you and taught you a lot. So when do you choose to follow tradition, and when do you choose to experiment?
I think it's more of a combination of both, because I'm still using traditional tools and techniques of a wood lathe. I've just experimented and gone beyond the typical bowl or platter. I've done hollow forms and things like that, but they've always been a little crazier with holes and wings on them and stuff like that. So I've always been pushing the limits. So it's just, I think it's a combination of both, really.
Let's see. And then, are there any issues of diversity for wood artists? For example, the issue of gender and race in art making is a recurring topic. And have you seen similar issues facing wood artists?
I haven't really seen any issues. There's plenty of, from what I've seen going around doing art shows, there's plenty of diversity in the woodworking world.
And like among men, women, and then people of different races?
Men, women, different races. There's even blind wood turners. There's blind woodworkers. So it's out there. They're out there. You just have to know where to find them, really.
And then it's nice that there are groups for like wood turning where people can come together. And, have that sense where the passion for the medium.
The commonality is wood. When you go to the symposiums and the conventions to listen to all these people from all over the world or all over the country do their demonstration, you've got people of all backgrounds in the classrooms. You've got doctors, lawyers, other woodworkers, it's just a broad spectrum of careers, but they're all brought together by this one common interest of wood.
So what about wood is special for you? What drew you to that medium?
I guess just the diversity of it. You can just do so much with it. There's just so many different directions you can go with woodworking. Which is what I think is what I like about it. And it's also the different woods themselves, the colors and the characteristics of the different species of wood. It's always fascinating to find, different pieces of grain and patterns and the grain patterns and the figures in the wood and stuff like that. It's just always fascinating to find something different.
Do you have a favorite wood to work with?
Not really. There's definitely woods that are easier to work with than others. And then there's times that some of my sculptures, I have an idea and I'm like, well, I need this wood to contrast with this one, and the grains are very similar. So I just kind of have to deal with, the intricacies of, the difficulty of one grain being, harder or more brittle than another one and stuff like that.
So it's kind of, you have a project or a piece in mind, and then you find the wood to work with.
I learned years ago, even before I started doing the wall sculptures, if I saw a piece of wood that I liked, if we could afford it, I would buy it and figure out what to do with it later. So I have a really good stash of slabs from all over the world that I've collected. And when I started doing wall sculptures, that collection started to go down pretty quickly. But we're still looking for new pieces of wood, new ideas. The internet's been very helpful with that. I've got several dealers that I look at online, and when we travel to shows, we go to other hardwood stores to see what's available, and usually we come back home with something.
Yeah, that's great. And I've heard that similar sentiment echoed by other artists as well, that they've had a piece of, for example, like spalted maple. They had it for 15 years before they found the right thing to do.
Exactly. Yeah. I have pieces laying around, and until you get the right moment and the right feeling for it, you might as well just let it sit there. Because you don't want to force it, because then the piece isn't going to look that good, or it may just become a bonfire, which that's called performance art. And you may never get to that piece, but you still have it, and when the time's right, hopefully you can get to it.
So is nature important to your work, either in subject matter or material? And do you ever use found materials?
When I first started turning, I was using found wood because it was basically what they call green wood for turning, which is a lot easier. Now that my work has become more sculptural, I need kiln-dried wood, so it's harder to find. I have to go to a dealer to buy the wood. As far as nature still has an influence, but not as much. But I'm always looking for the really nice grain or patterns or spalting or some really interesting knots that I can incorporate into a sculpture. So I think nature's always going to have a voice in what I'm doing.
Well, and it just seems that your work, you just do such a good job highlighting the natural beauty of the wood, the grain of the wood. So I can see it's like nature being a huge inspiration in that sense. So could you tell me about the piece that you have next to you?
Okay, this is a piece of English elm, and it was actually purchased out of Massachusetts and shipped to me. So this was one of my online sources that I found. This is actually, I've only done a few pieces that have natural edges on them. This is the second one that I've done that way. And this is also the second piece that I arranged the polyptych instead of a traditional rectangles and squares. I went a little bit more angular with this piece. But everything on this piece, or all my pieces, is pre-planned out. Everything's laid out with acrylic circles as to where everything is going to go, so that I can make sure that everything's in place. Mostly because of where the voids are, I don't want a critical piece of the sculpture to be lost in that. So, but I'm also always trying to find a fluidity. It may not make sense to anybody else, but in my mind, I'm seeing a pattern and a flow to what I've created on the piece.
Yeah, it's a beautiful piece that you have next to you. Was there any sort of inspiration behind it, or you're just...
Not really. A lot of my pieces are going more towards multiple centers now, and I've done several with the hand carving in them as well, just to give it a little bit more of an organic feel, adding more texture that way as well.